Well, folks, how y'all doing today? Oh, we're not so bad. At any rate, folks, you know, there's some silly people. If you happen to know about, conflicts with Marxists or Marxism or whatever, then you're a Marxist. Or I'm an anti-Marxist who likes to know about my enemies and how they actually act on the ground in various instances. I analyze their stuff and then look at it from a counter view to see how they're trying to fool me. So if they say something isn't a certain thing, I know they're admitting to a certain thing, but by backhand. I say, no, it isn't that, it isn't that. Usually means it is that. Imagine that. Totally shocked. Knocked me over the feather, right? Now, it is ridiculous, folks. So, like the Viet Cong. Oh, you support the Viet Cong. Well, Charlie won, okay, and we have to deal with this and analyze why. I mean, I think the 58,000 dead men deserve that, but that's just how it works. I didn't put those guys in harm's way. I was a boy when it all came to a wrap-up. When I say this, I mean I was 6 months old when the last combat operations occurred by United States forces in Southeast Asia. So, I was a little older than that because there were a couple of bombing operations after. But as the ground troops, I was 8 months old. Oh, yeah, I was going to hit the trenches all right. So, no, and it wouldn't have been my way. For instance, fighting it out in South Vietnam without choking off the Ho Chi Minh Trail was absurd. You see, okay, first off, the Ho Chi Minh Trail isn't a trail. It's a network of communications and sort of, it's a highway by the end of byways and interconnected roads, bridges, rest stops, refitting areas, hospitals, training facilities, and all sorts of things. All along this spine between Laos, down in Vietnam, and then into the highlands, the center of Vietnam there, and then into the south, further south, all through Cambodia mostly. And without this being shut off, how do you expect to defeat this NLF, which is the National Liberation Front, which is really the North under a political guise in the South? In the South, how do you plan to cut them off from the villages? How do you plan to starve them out? How do you plan to run them out of ammunition and bring their cadres out so you can fight them? And after this had happened at Tet, wasn't the advantage pushed into Laos and Cambodia? Why? This would have been the perfect time to roll that trail right up and start to decimate these people in the villages. Okay? Now, this is just how you do this. You find the cadres and you eliminate them. You root them out. Otherwise, it's all for naught. Because they'll simply reorganize, rearm, refit, and, This whole phenomenon where they'd fall back into Cambodia, the NVA or the NLF or the Viet Cong or whatever you call them, would fall back into Cambodia and come back as new regiments. All new, all re-equipped, all refitted. I mean, come on, man. In some cases, this happened 4 or 5 times. Now, why was were these safe bases in Cambodia and Laos never cut off? Why was there no serious attempt to drive back the forces that were in the DMZ the entire time in violation of the Geneva Accords as far as the resolution of the French and Vietnamese Viet Minh conflict in Indochina? Why? Well, who knows? Just because, Because, communists and shit, I guess. I don't know. I don't get it. Because, okay, honestly, when we first came ashore, Americans, and engaged these people, yeah, we tore the regiments up pretty dang good. Sure we did. There ain't no doubt about it. But see, then they changed tactics and trying to engage harder with people that are trying guerrilla warfare of mines and traps and sniping and ambushing. That doesn't work. That just increases casualties. It's ridiculous, right? On top of the fact that we run into these people that are completely entrenched. They have these tunnel systems that were far more vast than we were to know for years for some reason. And, this is ridiculous. No. To take out an enemy like this, you have to choke off the logistical supply. And that trail, what's known as the Ho Chi Minh Trail, though it's not a trail, it's a series, a network of roads and bridges and even waterways that flowed generally in that southern direction and provided supplies and troops and food and the whole thing. There were even entertainment troops that went around and did little dancing shows and such. Yes, right. Oh yeah. Yeah, they were thorough. Hell, there were anti-aircraft troops on the trail by the end. But in the early days, when we first arrived in country, we could have easily drove them off that trail. The bombing campaign was okay. It was in it somewhat, but in the end, you have to occupy ground to deny the enemy the use of it. You have to put them in there and do patrols and sweeps, patrols and sweeps, patrols and sweeps. What has to be done, you know? We need to have men in Laos. We need to have men in Cambodia. And we need to cut them off from this. What could they have done? What are they going to do? Fall back into China? The Chinese and the Vietnamese hate each other. Don't you know anything? Are you silly? The Vietnamese would want nothing less than to have the Chinese come assist them. Remember, the last time the Chinese had been in Vietnam was a Kuomintang army, and they had negotiated to bring back the French to get rid of these people. So, okay? Yeah. No. We could have, at that point, forced some kind of negotiation and at least left the South in some kind of shape that might have been able to defend itself. I mean, it should be noted during Tet that as far as the urban combat's concerned, other than Wei and a few select American troops in Saigon, which those guys fought very well, most of it was ARVN that were engaged. Most of the American forces were out in the countryside, you know. They were out trying to do the big battle. They got the big battle they wanted, but, you know, not quite the way they wanted, you know. Air power saved that all from coming undone. One of the largest airdrops ever. Absolutely. Sustained bombardment. Around Khe Sanh, absolutely. Pounding the NVA. However, as I've noted before, though, you can see the 66th Regiment. There's film of them digging in towards the perimeter of Khe Sanh. They're just digging away. And they're being pounded. There's no doubt. I mean, you can see it. It's just boom, 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 boom around them. They're just digging away. Okay? It's actually pretty impressive. You know? And they left in order. I might note they didn't run away. That's just a fairy tale. Right? They were highly disciplined professionals, man. The NVA weren't like some weak conscript army, you know. We just never played this right. It's like we never really wanted to try to seriously deny the NVA access to the NLF to fortify and supply them. We had to do this, otherwise there could have been no victory, you know? No victory. And then we did shady things like hang the Hmong out to dry. That was no good either. That was no good. You should never have 10 and 12 and 14-year-old boys fighting a siege campaign from the top of a mountain. Good rule of thumb. If you've done this, perhaps your planning has failed, yeah. And if you could have brought in mercenaries, you should have brought them in a lot sooner than the 12-year-olds. Good idea. Yeah. Just for next time. Okay, guys? PR, guys. Just think PR, okay? Okay, you know, I mean, on the other hand, let's be real. A lot of NVA died going up against these people, but Jesus, man. Ridiculous, you know? Now, the fact is that if we would have actually cut off these supplies, though, coming across Laos, and cut off the supplies from North Vietnam through the DMZ, you know, there'd been a whole other war, but, yeah. The big fucking battle, right? The big battle, man. It's like, no, you have to win a guerrilla war. You have to build up forces slowly, arrange your forces such that you can box the guerrillas in, and then cut them off from supply and force them to come to battle against you. That's how you win a guerrilla war. At least to my knowledge, right? No, not these people. Nope. No. So, you know, Washington wasted 58,000 lives, and I don't mean wasted in some cases, outright wasted. I'm not against these kind of attrition battles out on these hills in the hinterland either, so you understand. It's that there was no attempt to bring a strategic victory from these battles. That's the purpose of these tactical engagements, is to prepare for proper strategic victory. You see? Right? I mean, I think every officer in the war would agree with me on this. That's just what it is. I mean, that's why you do these things, you know? And it could have been done. That's the thing, is that we had the force at early point in the war that we could have pushed it hard on the air power and some kind of minimal invasion force on the south of North Vietnam, and force them to come to terms right now. But we didn't. Johnson was weak. The Joint Chief of Staff and the rest had other plans. They were better men. I think this is why the leftist media mock people like LeMay so much. He wasn't the crazy person you're meant to believe. Right? He wasn't, and neither any of the rest of them who are sort of mocked, there's a bunch of them, Wheeler and so forth. They're not all that cracked. I mean, I'm not going to say I agree with everything that ever came out of their mouth. No. But, no, they were competent professionals, and they understood you can't win a guerrilla campaign unless you cut off its supplies. And, the bombing campaign had been analyzed by people who had done the strategic bombing campaign analysis for World War II in Germany and others, and it had been determined that they were always going to get through enough supplies. If that's the case, you have to put men on the ground to mop up. You have to do this. You have to have men on the ground to mop up, to keep these supplies from reaching the rebels. You have to do it. Okay? If it's going to be like that, you have to force them to come and hit you to drive these men off of their supply line. You see? Now that's what you have to do. Dien Bien Phu my ass, Some of that terrain up there, I mean, it's hard to hit. It can be made into a natural force. Jesus, ask the NVA. We could have done this before them, you see. Been ahead of them. Okay? No. And by the time we did hit them, we killed a few of them. We got some guns. There was a lot of ammunition. Sure. Yeah. But they had something like 100,000 men on that line, on the Ho Chi Minh Trail, manning the trail permanently. It was a permanent logistical staff. Like, oh my God. It's a lot of, they could bring down just tons of people, tons of things. They moved two tank attacks. They attacked with tanks twice. They made a pipeline that brought oil down like almost all the way into South Vietnam. That's how they did the final assault with the tanks. This all could have been stopped. Right? But there was no way the ARVN were going to invade and do this. Let's be realistic, man. But we should have done it when we had the support of the Australians, the support of the New Zealanders, and so forth, people who were good at brush warfare. We should have went up there and secured strategic points and cut that trail off. Pinched it tight and continued the strategic air campaign using the men on the ground to spot for the strategic air campaign. That would have been the best use of resources, but it wasn't done. What do you want me to say? I mean, well, yes, I'm a communist. Why? Because I'd rather that we had used less lives more efficiently. And there's better honor in that, don't you think? Moreover, these guys going up and doing this would have been professionals, not regular army. Get real. They'd have been long-term professionals who knew the score. Right? That's the best. Hey, there's no confusion in these kind of people's minds about what's going on. They're the perfect sword for this sort of thing. Yeah? Moreover, there were lots of locals who were anti-communist at this point. We could have paid them to act as either auxiliary and or others. They could have carried a rifle. They could shoot. Right? No. Well, moreover, all American economic input into South Vietnam, almost nothing put out in these villages. We could have turned these villages easily in the beginning in 62, 63, 64, easily, with just a little bit of money, promising debt relief, promised them ownership of land, which is cheap. It was fabulously cheap compared to war, and have them on our side, Charlie or no Charlie. With just some World War II surplus rifles, they could have defended themselves against Charlie at the time. And yeah, it all could have been done, but, New and the other brother, the one that I never can remember his name, DM's not the one, he's the president. There's another guy who ran the secret prisons, and yeah, let's just say they were a bit too extensive in their mop-ups, yeah. They rounded up everybody. And, well, it's going to anger people. Yeah. By the end, they had the communists, the Buddhists, and 3 other weird sets of gangster secret societies, all against the government at once. I'm thinking maybe no. Do you know? Maybe no. But somebody decided to support this. The fact of the matter is this. You can pretend that the communists caused these uprisings, or you can face reality. That new secret police went down to a Buddhist temple and these other secret societies, raided their places, beat up their people, arrested their priests, and so forth, and, acted generally like a bunch of gangsters themselves. Yeah, that's going to anger people. Third world or no. Particularly when it's been going on for quite some time now. The fact of the matter is that, listen, right up until the point where they had actually raided these religious pagodas, the army was behind these people. The army was behind Diem and his brother. Right up till that point, if they would have just let it be up to then, let it simmer off, it all could have been fine. But they had to go heavy-handed every time. What can you do? What can you do? The fact is, though, is that I'm not sure that American involvement in this whole thing was a good idea. It just allowed the North to escalate its war. It gave them a better excuse for why Moscow and China should better arm their so-called southern independent guerrillas and so forth, which was the way they were described at the time by the North. Oh, these are just a spontaneous bunch of people who just happen to have a supply line from here through Laos into Cambodia and down into South Vietnam. Like an umbilical cord. That's how it works. But it never was. It never was. I mean, it was literally allowed to become like a fortified line, basically. By the end, I don't know if we could have rolled it up. But we should have early seized key high points along the way and did exactly what the Romans would have done. Make fortresses that were high and have mobile sweeps. Yeah. That's where all this firepower comes in useful, do you see? And well, this could have been done early in the game, and it would have, I think, materially affected the outcome of the war. You see, I mean, there's something about cutting off an insurgency from supply, driving them into the hinterland, and forcing them to fight on your terms. But this would have took, the resolve to understand that their main bases were in these villages, right? And that these remote supply areas were like fallback points. We never could. We never could come to that. And so, defeat was the only thing to be had. It's sad. Or rather, not defeat, don't get me wrong. It's like there's no key engagement where you can say, Americans were just resoundingly, just... There are a couple of platoons that got the back of the hand. Sure, they were hit by, regiment-sized forces in some cases. Battalion-sized forces. Of course they got hammered, you dumbass. Hello? It's amazing any of them survived in some cases. But, this is the kind of logic here. It's like, this isn't how you evaluate a war. You evaluate a war by who obtained the strategic political goals they wanted by the use of the force and who didn't. And we didn't. And they did. That's how it is. That's how it sits. We lost 58,000 men because we had politicians who were too cowardly to understand that we at least needed to choke point the trail. Cut it off. Cut it in two. Cut it where, basically where Cambodia meets Laos there would have been perfect. Wham, That would have been a perfect place to choke that off. But no. Nope. Why would you want to do that? Why would you want to make actual incursion into the South difficult? Nope. As it seems that the Special Forces guys knew more or less where these people were, how many there were, and so forth. It's like, I don't fault them. They were just sent out there as spotters. They weren't given, they didn't have full, disposal. But still, it's, I don't get it. It's like, you send out spotters, they know where this is at, and then why can't we put other guys on it with force? Why can't that happen? Why is that? Or why can't we send these guys out in a larger force and hit these convoys, ambush these convoys, make them fight all the way down through every goddamn mountain pass, every ravine, every bridge, every choke point, make them fight for it? Why can't this happen? Why didn't this happen? God only know. Especially considering that land up there is even more rugged, and there's far less people up there than there was even in the remote lands of Vietnam itself. If you wanted to fight a battle away from the populated areas, that's the place to go. Nope. It's cowardly stuff, especially when the enemy's doing this right in front of your face. And it seems that, I mean, I used to believe the whole, we just got to boo, but it's like, no, at the time everyone knew this was happening. Everyone that knew anything about the war, of course, knew it was happening. Everyone knew. Everyone knew Charlie was getting supplies through Cambodia from the north. Everyone! Everyone! Even the poorest villager knew this. The poor people in the slums, the cities knew this. Everyone knew. Everyone knew. Everyone knew. Except for, it seems, most Americans today, who have selective amnesia. Well, let's push foot around. I mean, you can't win an insurgency that you can't choke off. You know? We couldn't choke off, or wouldn't choke off, the Ho Chi Minh Trail because of that. And that's Vietnam in a nutshell. Not pro-communist at all. It's pro-reality. It's pro-respect for the men that died there. I mean, if we would have admitted this, arguably 20,000 or more of those men could have not died. A lot less men could have died. And since the terrain is so difficult up there, Charlie's deaths could have been increased manyfold, as well as material destruction of Soviet capacity. You know, it could have been increased muchfold, and it could have all been destroyed away from the populated areas where it could have never, ever helped the NLF in their struggle for control of the villages and countryside of South Vietnam. Just saying. Have a nice day. Well, folks, how y'all doing today? Oh, you know, it is what it is. The days go, you know. There is that, at least. Now, you know, often people ask these interesting questions. Wars, why my opinion on them would matter. Vietnam in particular. Okay. But off the cuff, I mean, no notes in front of me, and Vietnam is a pretty extensive subject, you know. It's not just a bunch of battles, it's a lot more than that. You know, there's the whole French colonial build-up, which we don't really have a hand in per se, but, right, we did try to help them get it back at the end of World War II, which, all in all considered, wasn't a very wise move. However, as it sits, we took over from the French essentially with an interim between their signing of the Geneva Accords in 1953 after Dien Bien Phu, which was a catastrophic defeat that it never needed to happen. And frankly, truly, us and the British, we left the French hanging on that one. It was not a good maneuver. At any rate, it makes no difference. I don't know that it would have undone the war outcome at either rate, since, well, you can look at the map and it's pretty easy to see where that one's going. So, as it sits, we take over from these peoples, essentially become Big Daddy, protectorate, if you wish, suzerain, overlord of the South. They're not ever really independent of us. That's just a figment. It's a fiction. Yeah, and it's a poor one at that. Now, as it sits, interestingly, there was supposed to be nationwide elections in, I want to say 3 years. At any rate, there were going to be elections, but they never were held. And so, after these elections were canceled, the North started infiltrating cadres down what became the Ho Chi Minh Trail and across the DMZ. It should never be underestimated. The people did cross directly across the DMZ the whole time, though not as great in numbers as down the trail, which, okay, this is one of the first big ones because this is a very important supply line, you know. It's not a trail. It's a series, networks of trails, roadways, rivers, and so forth, you know, that all generally lead south, yeah, and allow you to jump off at various points into northern South Vietnam, central South Vietnam, you know, so forth, right? Okay. Now, in the early days, this is extremely primitive, you know, I mean, like, it took like a month and a half or something. It was a long time to get down, and arduous path, you know. By the end of it, it was basically a hard paved road. Yeah. brought fuel down for a tank offensive. Yep. So this is the effect. Now notice we bombed this area like no tomorrow, perpetually, and yet they just kept building right around the bombed areas, and they got through enough trucks to supply their war because of this. Now you say, what could we have done? I was saying about 59, 60, like before it got to be a serious situation. You cut that supply line off up in Laos. That's where you stop that, right? At the spigot. Yeah. This forces them to take a much more difficult path that, again, is much more exposed than the jungle path that they took otherwise. But no. So, do you see? And because of this, basically, while this is one of those difficult things, we won the firefights, we won the main battles, mostly in the main, there's no doubt about that, totally. However, wars aren't about firefights, they're about political objectives, and if you allow communists to resupply, retreat into a neutral or safe area regardless, refit, recoup, and so forth, they'll just keep fighting forever. Wouldn't you? I mean, by the end of it, it was a whole logistical supply line, effectively humongous operation, really. So it never was really effectively dealt with. And just, you know, I never thought about it much until I was watching a documentary, and the guy saying it's in his 5th Special Forces, it says under, and he seems really upset about all this. I'm like, you know, like very, very agitated about the whole thing, you know, like all these trucks, we know where they're at, and, you know, it just really, is this common occurrence? I mean, you know, right, you only know what you know. Then it occurs to me, yeah, the only real way to shut down any type of land route is with some kind of foot forces. The planes ain't going to do it. No way. No way. Won't gonna happen. And there it is. So much for that. It isn't to say it didn't help, you know, bombing the shit out of the place, but they always, even the Johnson administration, calculated right from the very beginning that the number of trucks that will get through, based on probable estimates, was always going to be high enough to sustain the guerrilla activity in the field. Okay? Yeah. I know it's rough. It's tough. But there it is, you know. It just seems more sensible to me. Cut off the supplies and then you can effectively end the war, yeah? But as long as they can get food, ammunition, guns, so forth, so forth. And they have these safe places that you won't go, that they can retreat into, refit, recoup, not to mention the bunker and tunnel complexes they had going on. You know, what can you do? You understand? You can win every single battle in these situations, and these regiments fall back, reform, get refitted up, and come right back over the border. It's senseless, right? It's not to say that the men doing it are senseless. It's to say that the policy itself is asinine. Since if the goal is to defeat a communist insurgency, and this insurgency is using safe bases over the border as its tactical springboard into where it's fighting you, well, if you defeat them and they can retreat, and it's proven pretty quick that they were pretty facile at this, they could break up into 3-man cells on the move, quick, and, you know, blend off. Fairly effective, you know, since it means they can disperse. You understand? This means that bombing is much more ineffective, you know. And all firepower, really, for that matter, would be, if you think about it. So, yeah, well, you know, it isn't exactly like they were just playing. They wanted their country, that's for dang sure. They definitely put in some effort for it. There's no doubt about this. So, but that right there, it made it so, how do I say this nicely? If you beat up an enemy and they can run away and always come back, you know, whenever they want, at their own time, without any consideration for what, you know, they're running the war. In a story, you're just participating, but they're running the war. They have full control tempo. That's no good, you know. It's no good at all, right? What can I say? Or the other thing I didn't know, Now, I always kind of figured when they said we had bombed the North in the beginning that, it meant that we had, like, hit a series of reasonable strategic targets meant to cripple their industry and so forth. No, like warnings so they could disperse everything. You do what? See, when you're going to hit a country, like a communist country particularly, the first time you want to hit them good, you want to hit, transportation, fuel, railways, bridges, roads, ports. You get what I'm saying, dude? Ports, particularly when they have the main bridges that crossed over from China and so forth. Yeah, this all would be in good targets, but nope. Power stations, maybe even. Nope. You understand? So in other words, basically, the Johnson administration just allowed them to move everything out and disperse it, move it off into the countryside and everything else. This is ridiculously stupid in every way. And then by the time he did get serious about bombing them, they had put in place a fairly sophisticated anti-aircraft system that was, capable of taking down most anything that flew. Odds. It's all about odds. It's all kinds of things flying through the air there, and then SAMs on top of it. So, it was fairly sophisticated. It wasn't super top of rate, but it was, right? And that never need have been the case. Nope. They just figured we'd fight on the defensive. Eventually the communists would give up. Maybe the clue might have been that, like, right after Tet, because we kicked in their teeth really good in the South during Tet. This is a really bad misconception. Most people have that somehow the Tet offensive was a military victory. It was a political victory for the Viet Cong. There's no doubt about that. They got the media victory as such, the moral victory or whatever you like to call it. But militarily, American troops were usually not engaged with them in the cities. It's way and out in the countries more American troops. But in the cities, it's a lot of ARBN, and they held them fairly good. They beat their ass pretty well. But the other key thing is that, you see, again, if you ever dealt with communists, you have a political front and a military front, right? They're like two separate units, though they're usually very much the same people. Does this make sense? It's just a fiction they like to play. Now, when the Tet Offensive came out, lots of this political front came up, to sort of try to push forward the general uprising, Well, capturing these people obviously crippled the organization. Killing all these other Viet Cong fighters, which there was a significant number of them took down, surely helped weaken them, right? Now, you'll find that I'm not really much for Westmoreland. He's not really my cup of tea. Fine. But he's absolutely correct here, is that right about the end of these operations, once, Khe Sanh was secure, Way was taken care of and so forth, it was time to go over into Cambodia and Laos and kick in their teeth in their base areas. Because, right? No such thing. No such thing. Because why? Well, who knows? Texas politicians or something. Vagaries of crazy people's advice. Who knows? It surely wasn't militarily thought out, The whole war can almost be said to be like this, where there's almost no logic to the whole thing, Like, for instance, we have all this air power at the beginning, right? They have very little transportation, very little bridges, right there, right? We could have crippled them right off the top, and no, instead we toyed with them. I don't get it. We lost a lot of planes that we didn't have to lose, flew a lot of sorties that were not required to fly. In other words, in my view at least. It's ridiculous. It's like, if we were never going to go into these base areas, what did these 58,000 guys die to do? What did they die to do? Because you have to shut down the base areas for a communist insurgency to be kaput. Do you understand? There's no other way. It's what is it? It's a Maoist operation. The ideas behind it. People's War, I think, might be the tract by Mao. Yeah, these areas of operation that are outside of the enemy's reach are sort of integral to the concept. In other words, as long as they have those, you can never bring it to a resolution. They can always lay low, lick their wounds, and come back, which is highly unideal, you know. Highly unideal. Well, then, of course, there's the bunker and tunnel complexes in South Vietnam itself, some of which were never actually ferreted out very well at all. Well, you know, a few of them ran underneath the base in the Iron Triangle there when we first established base up in there. But yeah, it's always good. It's not, I mean, a little Viet Cong tunnel under your base. Psh. What do you think about that? The friendly fire incidents. Yeah, that'd be, what is that? It's a light infantry brigade. They're stationed in the north of the country. They're up on the border of Cambodia. At any rate, the point being is that there was a lot of these all over the place, and it wasn't really well. There wasn't a good handle on all that, you know. There's a lot of things that could have been done much better. For one thing, let's just be honest about this. These, neither DM, who is it, crackpot, or these general juntas were very ideal, yeah? Okay? No. I don't know. Now, sure, did DM defy the powerful gangster, you know, secret police chief? Yeah, sure he did, yeah, okay. But then he went crazy and literally made everyone angry at the same time, to the point where the Buddhists, the communists, they're all making friends. No, you see, you never want to make all your enemies angry at once, right? And when you do that, you want to make sure that monks aren't lighting themselves on fire. Oh man. Now, of course, that's political theater, don't get me wrong, you know? But it's ridiculous, you know? Now, the fact is that we're a good section of the Viet Cong Buddhists, absolutely. Even a good section of the communists from the north were. Yeah, no, but there it is. Crazier things have happened, yes, absolutely. The very fact is we never had any real grasp on how we were going to bring this to a resolution, since, in the end, the only thing I can reckon is we were going to play sheriff protector of the borders of South Vietnam forever, because if you can't stop the communists from wishing to come in, right, and you can't root out their political organization, and we sure as hell couldn't. We tried very hard. Phoenix, they weren't playing, which during the Phoenix program. They meant to take out the cadres and political infrastructure, but, you know, the VCI, the Viet Cong infrastructure, the people, that made the Viet Cong a political reality on the ground. You eliminate them, you eliminate Charlie. It's very simple stuff. However, and I should note that program did give them quite a little jolt. They have admitted since that, yeah, it was relatively effective. But, be it as it may, be it as it might, it wasn't operating up in the jungles of Cambodia and Laos, the hills of Laos. And so Charlie could always fall back there. Always could fall back there. You understand? It's absolutely, it's almost crazy in its way, you know? It's just a bizarre situation. In fact, this happened during the very first encounter, the major encounter with, what is it? Oh, Jesus, Ansha Valley, the Battle of Ansha Valley. They hit us. We hit them back. They fell back into Cambodia, more or less. And along the way, set up an ambush and wiped out a fair number of our guys. Yeah, it's a little unknown, usually untold part of that. It's not quite as glorious, you know. But yeah, that's how it is, you know. But the point is the same. As I say, they, you know, once they were over the border, sure, we could bomb them a little maybe, but there's no real knowing how effective that was to begin with, you know. Right? The point is, though, is that if you have an enemy that can go to some place like that, and they get to this place, you can't war with them anymore. And thus, they've just cut you off from your operations, you know. Like, and if you have a political infrastructure that you can't find, you know, COSVIN, anyone? Oh, that's the command structure for South Vietnam or whatever. No such place was ever found. Right? There's probably a couple maps, radio. Yeah, right. At any route, I mean, what can you really expect guys to do? I mean, sure, they can go to villages, do operations, go do sweeps, and this and that and the other. But if in the end, the rice, the weapons, the ammunition, you know, all the political literature, the trained cadres, you know, keep coming down the trail and keep arriving on destination and, you know, falling in the slot. I mean, you just, you know, it's not sensible. It's not sensible at all. It's absolutely, it makes no sense to me in the least. Like, why wouldn't you want to secure these base areas? I mean, it at least makes some sense to go in there and break them up physically with the people, you know, so you know, not with bombs. You can't really know, yeah, you know. It's ridiculous. Yeah, there it is, right? The years of this, too. Though Afghanistan is longer now. That probably has its own absurdities. I haven't delved into it deep enough, thank God, right? Vietnam's pressing in the sense that, well, it's an interesting war in the sense that, yeah, there's an actual communist enemy, but on the other hand, it's like we didn't want to win, and I mean, I don't mean like the guys in the field weren't trying to win. No, of course they're trying to win, duh. But I mean, Washington, Johnson in particular, doesn't seem very in the game to want to win, you know? Like all kinds of weird limitations that make no sense. No sense at all. None. Like, they got one port. Hit the thing. No, they might hit a Russian. Ridiculous. You know? Utterly, how do you wage war like this? You know? Don't bomb these critical targets. Why? You know right where they're at. They're right on your flight path. And again, this isn't me saying this. I mean, I watch these documentaries and pay attention to what these people are saying. It's like, is this guy trying to say that he knew, you know, the things that would be, you know, don't get targets of opportunity. Okay. Seems like a particular way to wage a war, doesn't it now? Right? It seems very peculiar. It seems even more peculiar that you would have just all these handicaps on yourself. Why? It makes no sense. All that wound up happening is we stalled around with air power enough to where Hanoi became highly defended. We lost a lot of planes because of this. A lot of planes. Now we lost a lot of planes otherwise now. Okay? I mean, there's a lot of operations here, but you know, it just makes no sense at all. It's like, why would you do this when you know, it just is silly. And everything that we did, we could have done with almost no losses early in the game. We could have just leveled Hanoi at any rate. Early in the game, with no problem. Easy. Now I'd probably lost a single plane. Instead we dinked around to way late in the game. And then, you know, well, again, like I say, fairly sophisticated air defenses that were, you know, capable. Obviously, look at the number of machines brought out of the sky. I mean, there it is. It's a fair number. I mean, look at the number of guys that got out of Hanoi Hilton. It's a large number of men. Now, those are survivors of plane crashes and those who didn't exfiltrate, that is, get out and get picked up, rescued, or whatnots. But it's still a fair large number of men that need not have been there. You know? It seems so much simpler to use the air power before they can use any effective countermeasures, and don't dally about it. I mean, seriously, right? Just like the whole Ho Chi Minh Trail thing, the minute we knew about the thing, why weren't we actually conducting operations to try to disrupt the trail in a real way instead of just bombing the thing? Anyone? Can you tell me? I mean, particularly in Laos, what were we paying all these people? What were all these people on payroll running around playing like they were civilians in Laos about? What? Doesn't make any sense, does it? Am I the only one who finds this to be... I mean, seriously? Because it's not sensible. It's like, okay, hold on a second. You know the approximate route of a supply line that supplies an insurgency that you're battling in the south, and yet you just basically bomb it from the air at high speed. Oh, I see. You understand? This is not sensible. This is not sensible at all. Well, obviously, the thing to do would be at a minimum to set up some kind of ambushing, harassing forces to, hit them, fall back, hit them, fall back. Do basically what Charlie did to Charlie. They have to take that trail. They have to go down south. This gives you an awful lot of opportunities to ambush them and hit them. Awful lot of time you can tangle them up in those hills, way off, way, 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 way from populated areas. Just seems more, I don't know, sensible, right? You need to stop these trucks, so make sure they get stopped, right? It just seems so much more practical in every which way, but no, nope. No, nothing like this ever happened, as far as I know, no. Dude, this is how crazy the USA is about things, the way it does things, I mean, don't get me wrong, we won most of these battles, sure, but again, winning battles is not a political victory. I mean, you have to remember, by the time that John Negroponte basically forced the South to accept the terms that were got at the Paris Accords, which are Accords, my ass, about a third of the South was overran, and the National Liberation Front had declared itself to be the provisional government. Yeah, getting ready to roll tanks for the second time. So let's just keep this in perspective, shall we? Effectively, let's just be honest, even our own ambassador barely made it out, Okay? Now, right, wrong, otherwise, the fact is that the place didn't hold up, Now, there's a lot of probably reasons for that. The number one, to my way of viewing things, would be the logistics-heavy nature of the equipment that we left them. In other words, they require a lot of spare parts, a lot of, tedious maintenance and so forth, and yeah. In a military that's charging you for rides in a medevac, probably not happening very well, yeah. Then there's also the little fact that the country itself had zero industrial base, and you're looking at many machines malfunctioning very fast, and basically back to foot slog. Yep. Now it's just a sad fact, but there it is. You know what I say? It's just how I see the matter. Because they did not hold up very well at all. Not very well in the least way. Without our bombing support, the first tank assault almost inevitably would have overran them. They were getting hammered. Do you understand? Just pushed. The second one, there was no significant resistance. You're right in front of Saigon. Some select troops put up a hell of a fight, but most of them were, again, peeking against the wall, so you got nothing to lose, It's the truth. And those guys fought pretty good, but the rest of the army crumbled. It's crumbled. That's the army of the, look, we're paying for 25% of men that ain't there. That's Lon Knoll. He's a whole nother trip, but suffice it to say, yeah, we all know how that turned out. Right? See, the thing is that we pick these horrendous, I don't even know what you'd call them. They're not even rulers. I mean, they're just puppets at best, right? And then we half-ass it. You can't win a war unless you actually take the war into the enemy's territory and defeat them. There's just no, hello. You especially cannot defeat a communist insurgency by shooting people in the field. And given that they pretty much ran these villages on their own time, yeah, yeah, a couple sweeps every once in a while doesn't really change that. It's just the way it is. It's a sad fact, but there it is, Why did we do all this, you ask? Oh, lots of reasons, I imagine. Anti-communism mainly, the main real reason I can think of. But, well, there's that vast armaments industry now. I mean, they made a pretty penny. There was a lot of money tossed all over the place there, that's for sure. But, a lot of reasons, really. But most likely it comes down to some variant. Most people were probably, at least in the beginning, on something like the domino theory of it. By the end, I don't know how you can anything but oppose the policy. It's not the warfare that bothers me, it's not the use of violence. It's not even the killing that bothers me. It's the idiotic wagon wheel wiping your ass way of trying to win this thing that just, it doesn't sit with me. Once I got the facts, then I'm like, no, hold on a second. So you know that there's a supply line here, and you do nothing about it. It just doesn't compute, do you understand? It's utterly, you know, like just crazy, because it makes no sense. But that's how it sounds. Now, would that have made a great difference? I don't know. I'm saying it would have at least put a greater pinch on the political front in South Vietnam, since they were being supplied almost exclusively by the North. So, yeah, and little, you know, contrary to any other belief, they basically were ran by the North from a certain period on, let's call it late 60s on, yeah. So, and of course any front part about it is always a sham, since in the end communists are the one with power. The others were just, you know, they just got took along. Yeah, right. That's how it will always turn out. That's just a feature of these little common front, these little united fronts with communists, yeah. Liberation fronts and so forth. Right. Oh, this ain't the only one. You can go look that up and you'll find dozens of them. You know, it's because that's just a common, one of the common sort of acronyms that communists use. You know, paramilitary is another one that they're fond of. You can find all kinds of, you know, all sorts of them, and just say, or military wings, another common one. You can find all sorts of different, you know, past, present, etc. You see, and to shut these down, the only real way to do it is either destroy these cadres and/or destroy the military means, the material means to wage war. This wasn't done, so we wasted a lot of men's lives, and sure, we won battles. There's no doubt about it, but because the things that must be done were not done, you can't win. You know, it sucks. There it is. It does really suck. You think about it. You win, right? All these battles, you know, but then there's no cumulative anything. People always wonder, well, how's this? Well, it's because, you see, you can win all the battles in South Vietnam you want, as long as they have those base areas. They're safe in their little retreat, you know. There it is. And that might even apply even more so to Afghanistan, since again there we want to pretend that the line that divides them, that the British just drew on a map, is somehow ethnically valid. It's not. But this is, again, you have the same refusal to learn. Well, see you later, folks.